Radhasoami Comes to America. Memories of Kehr Singh. Edited by Andrea D. Lane and David Christopher Lane. Read for you by Doug Haynie. The First Initiates. Kehr Singh's Recollections. First published in April 1977. Issue of Sat Sandesh. Events as shaped by the grace of Hazur, I now narrate. From adolescence, I had a strong interest in seeing foreign lands. At first, I thought of going to Australia, but could not, as immigration by Asians was forbidden. In 1904, I took the opportunity to go to Hong Kong via Bengal, Assam, a state in northern eastern India, Malaysia, and Singapore. I stayed in the trading center of Hong Kong, approximately 30 months. The city is situated on a hill, which is surrounded by sea. Between this hill and mainland China is a gulf, which is crossed in minutes by ferry. Transportation within the city is by streetcars, running from the coast to the top of the hill. At night, city lights and water reflections enhance the beauty. I also found a Gurdwara offering free accommodation for travelers. The master made my passage exceptionally easy. I went to Shanghai by boat and then to Japan. The Sea of Japan is a beautiful sight with people always walking the shores. The boat stayed at Kobe and Nagasaki for 2 days. From there, going to Yokohama. In old Yokohama, I found an ancient statue of Lord Buddha cast from an 8-metal alloy. He is seated cross-legged on a pedestal wearing large earrings. The figure, tall and robust, stands in a time-worn courtyard surrounded by buildings reminiscent of an Indian village. From Yokohama, our boat crossed the Pacific in roughly 20 days, reaching Victoria in British Columbia, Canada. In crossing, we made the 12-hour time change, gaining a day coming west. The voyage ended in Vancouver, British Columbia, where passengers were medically checked. Any suffering from infectious diseases is not allowed to enter either the United States or Canada. I found Vancouver to be a very beautiful city with a fair Sikh population, maintaining a large Gurdwara. Entering the United States, I went to Bellingham, Washington, and from there to Everett, where I met the former governor, Mr. D.M. Clow. He was sociable, cheerful, and a loving soul. I stayed with him 7 to 8 months. He was greatly impressed by the tenets of Radhasoami faith, but could not give up his dietary habits. I met many different types of people. Christian ministers would discuss the principles, but when I would quote, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God," and asked the real significance of the word, they would become silent. One day the local clergyman asked if I would like to go to Jerusalem for theological study in order to take up missionary work in India. When I explained the mission of Swamiji, he stopped and never again renewed the suggestion. I recall a stimulating conversation with the owner of the New Thought bookstore in Seattle. While appreciating the tenets of Radhasoami faith, he remarked that the ideas were of high order, but the public was not ready to receive them. He felt, with time, the teachings might be well received. In the beginning of 1908, I went to North Yakima, an orchard and farming area not far from Seattle, and I stayed for a couple of months. Close to my residence was the meeting hall of the local Socialist Party, which met every Sunday. I, too, was invited to attend a meeting and was questioned about Indian social conditions, as well as rites and rituals of different sects. I answered all questions satisfactorily. At the meeting was Dr. H.M. Brock, who later became a satsangi. He asked many questions on Indian religions, and I was very pleased, as was the audience, by the explanations. The secretary for the society was so impressed that he extended a standing invitation to their meetings. The next morning, Dr. Brock called and said that his wife was anxious to see me. He invited me to his office that afternoon. When I came, Miss Brock jumped up, and we warmly shook hands. A talented lady, she was more inclined to religion than anything else. She had been an editor of the Ladies' Home Journal and took keen interest in religious literature. Her collection of books included works on Hindu philosophy and various translations of the Al-Quran. I told her of Radhasoami for the first time, and she had a quick grasp of the teachings. Soon we met regularly and discussed the greatness of a living master. When they both felt convinced of the teachings, they wrote Hazur for acceptance and initiation. Hazur was well pleased with their sincerity and sent them Radhasoami Mat Prakash and discourses on Radhasoami faith, lovingly advising them to study the books carefully. He assured them of the gift of Nam, if and when they were thoroughly convinced of the path and ready to observe the dietetic restrictions. The doctor, with his wife, began learning the Gurmukhi script, and in their letters to the master would insert a line or two in that language. The master lovingly answered all questions and cleared their doubts. Leaving the couple in the hands of the master, I returned to Seattle and from there went to Portland, Oregon. It is a large city situated on both sides of the Columbia River. A railway line runs on each side of the river, and the city is spanned by a suspension bridge, which gives easy passage for ships. One day, I took a boat to a small town nearby. The Dulles. The scenery was beautiful. The boat was crowded, and as people were finding seats, I was asked, "Where are you from?" "I am from India." "Do you have any knowledge of spirituality?" "I have a little, but I am not an adept nor a master." "You know, a spirit has just told me that I should address any questions on spirituality to you. It is on such instructions that I have come to you." I asked the man to proceed. He referred to the Hindu belief of transmigration and wanted me to resolve his doubts. I asked his name. He was Mr. C. Charles, and was on a business trip. "Why is it you're going today? Why not some other day?" "Oh, I thought of going there only today." "The same thought that has caused you to travel today is also the root of transmigration," I told him. "It is the power of thought which governs one and all. Thought creates all motions and movements. One becomes and does what one thinks. The physical body, a mere mass of flesh and bones, cannot do anything by itself. It is moved by the force of thought alone. Thought force is potently sentient. This is proved by the dream state, when, in spite of the body, the senses, and the vital airs, one does not do anything because of the absence of thought force. Even in the waking state, one does nothing unless propelled by some thought. Thought currents work in every phase of life, waking, dreaming, deep sleep, even in the process of dying. In all states where the mind goes, so does the body. At the time of death, whatever thought is uppermost in the mind, one is irresistibly drawn there. It is an inexorable law of nature. Mr. Charles fully agreed, accepting the truth of the statement. In the course of our discussion, he informed me that he saw an East Indian, tall and lean, with an angelic countenance, who appeared and disappeared 3 times as we talked. He felt that the man was my master, looking after me in an alien land. He wished that he could meet him. Before parting, Mr. Charles gave me his business card. When I returned to Portland, I called Mr. Charles and was invited to his home. In a quarter of an hour, by bus service, I was with him. I found him with his wife and children waiting on the porch. Each gave a hearty handshake, receiving me warmly. Then we went inside, and Mr. Charles related the meeting on the ship and how he was convinced of transmigration, which was so natural, exact, and eternal. He had not the least doubt that there was life after death. He went on to describe how he had seen the astral form of the Master, was fully convinced about his spiritual greatness, and longed for instruction from him. The entire family was moved by his narrative. Mrs. Charles was an unsophisticated but intelligent lady, gifted with knowledge and understanding of spiritual matters. She told us that she was sometimes guided by a spirit who called herself Indra. The spirit was with her even then, and informed her that the master of this Indian guest was all perfect. Mrs. Charles expressed full faith in the words of the spirit. She then told her friend, Mrs. Reese, who was in the next room lying in a trance. She asked me to bring her back to consciousness. Though I had no such experience, I inwardly prayed to Hazur. By his grace, she soon recovered and said, "Why have you brought me down? I was in a beautiful garden with a pool in its center. There were flowers and full fruit trees all around it. I want to stay there forever." "What you say is correct," I said. "Your friends here were greatly concerned to see you lying in this state. As long as you are here, remain in a normal condition. You can do whatever you like when you return to your own home." Then she told us that once in a while she went into a trance when a spirit visited and made her its medium. Miss Frances Charles, the elder daughter, then wanted to know something of the Master. I told her that his teachings were simple, straightforward, and purely spiritual in nature. Spirituality has nothing to do with miracles. Those who desire to seek God were directly led back to the home of their Father. The soul is of the same essence as God. It is this which enlivens the body, quickening the mind and the senses. The soul alone is a conscious entity. All else is insentient. The soul has so identified with the outer world that it has now forgotten its own essential nature. What does the Master do? He, in his grace and compassion, takes the mind-ridden soul out of the magic box of the body and helps it withdraw. He puts it on the inner path which leads to its celestial heritage. It is an inner way which no one knows but a true and perfect Master. To each individual soul, his message: know thyself and then follow your path to know God. This physical body is a gross covering over the soul. The pranas, or the vital airs, constitute the subtle cover. The mind is a light covering, and the intellect lighter still. When a soul frees itself from these four coverings, it comes to its own and experiences the bliss inherent in itself, and becomes absorbed. Therein, the Master exhorts the soul: leave even this blissful state and surrender yourself wholly to the Guru. This, then, is all that is required from each soul, and the rest is the Master's job. To this extent, one is to exert himself, and then the Master takes charge of the soul for further inner progress. I then quoted, "Blessed indeed are they who reach his feet, and are accepted by him in grace." Hearing this, Mr. Charles' son cried, "How I wish I could have it!" Mrs. Reese said, "We have been living in delusion. We never had any knowledge of spirituality. I want to learn it from your spiritual Master." After that evening, Mrs. Charles would often invite me to their home to share the greatness of the Master. Gradually, they all became dyed in the love of the Master, and submitted applications for initiation. Hazur lovingly advised them to carefully study Radhasoami, Mat Prakash, and such discourses, to grasp the theory and to develop understanding. They were told to leave all prohibited food and drinks. Mrs. Reese was, however, asked to wait. After some time, Azur, in his grace, authorized the initiation of Dr. and Mrs. Brock. They came to Portland for the occasion. Everything was conveyed to them exactly as directed by Azur. They sincerely offered thanks to the Master for his grace in accepting them for something which was quite unique and not to be found in any sacred book. After a couple of days in Portland, they returned to their home. The Brocks were a loving couple, and the first on whom Azur showered his grace in America. Through them, many other Americans, such as Dr. Julian P. Johnson, had the good fortune to reach the feet of Azur. Many in America benefited through the satsang of the Brocks. Dr. and Mrs. Brock were also very interested in visiting India, and more than once requested permission, but Hazur would always dissuade them on grounds of inconvenience and expense. He encouraged them to be lovingly devoted to the spiritual practices of bhajan and simran, and to carry on conducting satsang. He assured them that Swamiji Maharaj would bless them with the fruit of darshan, no matter where they were. Accordingly, they never visited India. For some time, I lived in a small town on the southern bank of the Columbia River, opposite the Dalles. In winter, the river freezes, and people can walk across. At my home there, Dr. and Mrs. Brock came and stayed for a short while. I arranged a tea party and invited people from the surrounding area to meet with the Brocks. Both guests spoke on the Radhasoami faith, describing it as the highest teaching in spirituality. They had read in books that saints in India spent their lives in devotion on the banks of the river Ganges, but they had now found an adept and guide on the banks of the Beas. His teachings and techniques were singular and quite different, easily assimilable and practicable by all, whether man, woman, old, or young, and were the true way for knowing God. The audience was very impressed, particularly the Indians present, who were very pleased to hear and experience the Brocks' love and warmth. After the Brocks left, I had to see a man living 4 to 5 miles away. The trail to his home was much shorter than the road, so I chose to take the path. I had hardly gone any distance when I heard a voice saying, "The man you are to see is at the moment going to town in his carriage. You can meet him on the road. Go that way." I quickly retraced my steps, and no sooner was on the road than I saw a buggy coming. Waving my hand, it stopped. It was indeed the man I intended to see. I thanked Hazur for the strange way in which he had guided me. Another evening I had happened to come to a road with trees on both sides. As I began walking, I felt 2 shadowy figures on either side. At the other end of the road, I found a great being sitting on a chair. Seeing me, he inquired from the other 2 why they had brought me. They replied, "He has come on his own, and we only accompanied him as an escort." Then he said, "He is a disciple of Radhasoami Dayal, merciful. Take him to the garden." Leaving me in the garden, they disappeared. The garden was vast, expansive, and very beautiful. On one side I saw a ring of handsome young girls clapping and singing in a refrain, "Radhasoami, Radhasoami, Radhasoami Shah." After a while, I departed with a heart full of thankfulness to Hazur for his grace and mercy at every step. Shortly after I moved to Portland, I received permission from Hazur to reveal the secret of Nam to the entire Charles family. The family of 5 came from Vancouver, in Canada, to Portland for initiation. As I directed, I gave them the necessary instructions, after which they thanked Hazur for his grace in initiating them into the science of the beyond. Along with them was a man who wanted initiation. His application was forwarded to Hazur. I planned to visit South Bend, a large city in Oregon, and was told no East Indian had been there. Seeing a turbaned man, the people were excited and treated me respectfully. I stayed a month and had a constant stream of visitors. One night, an editor of a newspaper called with a clergyman. We talked late into the night. Having been educated in a missionary school, I was conversant with the Old and New Testament. I answered their questions satisfactorily, and the clergyman was greatly impressed by my knowledge of the Gospels. They had considered all Indians as idol worshippers and were much surprised by the tenets of spirituality. I explained to them that just as one goes to school for knowledge of the world, it was also necessary to go to an adept for self-knowledge and God-knowledge. Until receiving his knowledge from a perfect living master, one could not understand the abstract and abstruse inner truths referred to in the Scriptures. Jesus said, "Knock, and it shall be opened unto you." Prophet Muhammad told his followers to earnestly pray to Allah for the door of compassion to be opened. While on earth, both must have opened the inner doors to seekers of God, but later generations had to be content with only the teachings which they left. For aspirants to get a direct revelation of the straight gate and the narrow path, it has to come from a living master. Unfortunately, we read scriptures without coming to the true meaning. This is given only by a practical process of self-analysis, which comes only from a living master. The following day, the editor published an article about the teachings I conveyed. The following Sunday, I was invited to a church filled to capacity. The people were anxious to see and hear a foreigner. After the morning service, the minister took me to the altar and requested a talk on Indian religions. I inwardly prayed to Hazur, thanked the audience for their kindness in inviting me for a discourse, and said, "In India, there are few religions, but each has a number of splinter groups. Every group has its own particular mode of worship, characterized by rites, rituals, forms, and formulas. In spite of these, there is a religion of soul or spirit, which is the mother of all religions, and is all-embracing. It has a mode of worship, par excellence in every detail, and does not interfere with one's religious faith or belief whatsoever. It is open to all, and leads an aspirant straight to the kingdom of God. It is not new. It is the oldest in point of time. It is eternal, and forms the basis on which all present religions rest. It is natural, and God-made. God-men have appeared and taught the same, each in their own time, in the current language of the people, and according to their needs. Its portals are always open to all. In the present age, in India, it is known as the Radhasoami faith. Hazur Sant Sawan Singhji Maharaj now holds the key to this ancient science. He has headquarters at Dera Baba Jaimal Singh on the banks of the Beas River, which is in the Punjab. His teachings are purely spiritual, and the seekers come to him to learn this practical science. He tells us that the source of the entire universe is limitless and beyond count. It is all-inclusive and supremely silent, with no vibration whatsoever. It is a nameless ocean of quietude. It willed, and with it there arose a commotion which naturally produced sound, which flowed as a sound current. This sound current is the primal manifestation of God, and in Hindu it is called Radha. The source of this current, through which everything is manifest, is called Swami, Lord. When the primal sound and the sound current merge in the ocean of all consciousness, each loses its own identity. Both are part and parcel of the great silence, which is complete in itself and knows no variables. It is because of this that the two together constitute the way back to the home of our Father. This then is the path of the masters and religion in the true sense of the word. The prime current and the primal sounds set up a circle or region of pure spirit, which has a beginning but has no end. Whatever could not stop in that purely spiritual region moved down, and the same created a separate circle, the region of spirit and matter, or the spiritual material regions. Again, whatever could not remain there, in its turn descended and set up a third region, the material spiritual region. In between, in each region, are different centers. From this, it will be clear that the first and the original region alone is pure spirit, eternal and indestructible. The rest are just duplicate and triplicate copies. Being made of unstable matter, they cannot last, and are therefore subject to decay and destruction. Sant Ravidas tells us, "The domain of the first division is everlasting and eternal. The other two domains are quite unlike the first." Again, the denizens of the first region live forever. They are spiritually rich and suffer from no want. Thus the powers of nature reproduce the second region on the pattern of the first, and the third on the model of the second, each reflecting the one above it. Kabir Sahib, in this context, tells us, "The primal Maya cunningly wrought the world, creating in the material plane the world of delusion. From this, it is clear that all souls belong to the purely spiritual region, and are imprisoned in individual molds of mind and matter, populating the lower regions. To beguile them, Dame Nature provides all that is necessary to keep them happily engaged in sensual pleasures, which in time bring countless suffering. To prevent escape from here, there is a network of karmic actions and disciplines, like japa and tapa, or observance of rites and rituals, wherein one is caught up and remains further from truth, forgetting the true home. Bound in the world of his own make, one rides endlessly in the wheel of 84, up and down through heavens and hells." Hazrat Abu Ali Shah Qalandar says, "At times he goes to hell and abides therein. At times he goes to paradise, happily and joyously." Hazur Swamiji Maharaj also tells us, "Man has made for himself the ever-revolving wheel, and restlessly moves up and down without avail." As there are 84 locked species in the creation, so there are stages in between this world and Aswan Dwar, Par Brahm. After undergoing hardships in hells, the soul goes down still farther in transmigration. The souls of pious devotees, yogis, and jnanis go to higher realms to enjoy heavens for the good actions done by them. When they reap their fruit, they must come down once again to the earth plane, never free from the wheel, and as such find no way of escape to their true home. It is then that the Lord of compassion is moved, and He comes into the world in the garb of a saint. When such a master soul comes, he tells the jivas, mind-riddled souls, "The world is not your home. Your home is the purely spiritual region, the kingdom of God, where it is all beauty and glory. There you can claim your rich heritage as a birthright, though now it seems a lost province. The perfect Master puts them on the path Godward. In the entire creation, human birth is a great blessing, a rare privilege for which even the gods and goddesses aspire. Angels pray for it, as in this body alone one can work one's way to his Creator. The worldly people, however, consider the body as a mere instrument for seeking sense pleasure. On the contrary, the godly souls regarded as a temple of God, in which resides the great controlling power, sustaining all the three regions comprising the universe. There are reflex centers, or lotuses, in the body, which are joined to corresponding centers in the brain. In brief, this body is a small-scale replica of the three worlds, or the macrocosm. As above, so below, in an epitomized form. Should a person be fortunate enough to find a God-man and be accepted by him for guidance and help, one can reach the true home of the Father. All this is possible in the man body, and in no other, for the rest are only for reaping the fruit of past actions, while in the former, one can work for his own upliftment as well. Whenever a God-man appears on the earth to draw the jivas out of the meshes of the Lord of Dispensation, then incarnations of the lower powers, avatars in the form of yogis and yogish wars, rishi and muni, prophets and apostles, walls and Q-tubs, also come down and hold out promises and assurance to the jivas to take them to their respective realms. They win quite a large number by showing signs, miracles, and extrasensory powers. The majority of Hindus, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Jains, and Muslims are engaged in outer pursuits on the plane of the senses, and this accounts for such a variety of cults and the varied forms of worship. It is necessary for the aspirants and seekers after God to take refuge at the feet of a perfect master, and with loving devotion hear his discourses and work steadily on the path. Under his guidance, the soul will reach the eternal home and have conscious rest in all consciousness. Success, however, depends on patience, perseverance, intense longing, and yearning. I will close by explaining that the subject was so vast I had only touched upon it briefly. I told those interested that Hazur could be contacted personally or by correspondence. After this, an old gentleman lovingly said, at the top of his voice, "You are blessed." Another said, "It is the first time in my life that I have heard the teachings of an Indian master saint, which are indeed of a high order." Appendix: The History of Radhasoami in the United States. Excerpted from The Guru in America. Published in 1995. Professor Andrea D. Mlane, Ph.D., Mount San Antonio College. The evolution of religion is directly connected to the evolution of communication technologies. To understand the limits of the latter is to also understand the limits of the former's potential for growth. Thus, all histories of religion are to some measure histories of human development, especially as it relates to the transmission of information. That this is obvious is one thing. From speech to written word, to printed books, to radio, to television, to worldwide computer networks. But that it is rarely focused on in appraising how new religions develop is quite another thing altogether, and is something which should not be neglected in any history, religious or otherwise. The history of Radhasoami in the United States is a case in point. Why? Because, in many ways, the growth of Radhasoami in countries outside of India has been hitched, for better or worse, to the advancement of technology. Even within Radhasoami circles, this is well known, as evidenced in the introduction to an in-house Baya Satang publication entitled Dawn of Light, wherein the author writes the great advances made in communications have led to the worldwide spread of Shabda Yoga teachings, especially in Europe and North America. At each stage where there has been a technological revolution, there has been in turn an influx of new initiates to the Radhasoami path. To be sure, Radhasoami masters have not necessarily explained away such increased numbers to better telephone networks, but they have been well aware of how the evolution of the communication industry has led to new opportunities to advance the message of Saint-Mott. Equally related to this, of course, are political regimes. For example, when the Soviet Union officially banned religion, it had an amazingly chilling effect on the growth of new religions. Therefore, it is not at all surprising to learn that Radhasoami had made very little headway there until the latter part of the 1980s. Today, of course, Russian society has seen a great increase in the number of new religions and new converts. Throughout the history of the United States, on the other hand, religions, including alternative ideologies, have generally prospered, of tolerance and individualism, coupled with a laissez-faire type government. Specifically, Eastern religions have been quite successful in the United States. To fully understand the reasons for this, several historical and political factors must be considered. First of all, a fertile soil for Eastern ideas was sown when Indian literary material became available to the West through the translations of 19th century British scholars like Sir William Jones, Charles Wilkins, and Sir Edwin Arnold. American transcendentalists were attracted to these newly translated Indian writings and incorporated in their philosophy Eastern idealism with nature mysticism and Western individualism. A major step for Eastern religions occurred in America when Unitarians, many of whom were transcendentalists, set up the World Parliament of Religions in 1893. Several Indian teachers, particularly Vivekananda and Dharampala, were well received. Americans seemed to like what they heard, an appealing religious universalism, a non-ascetic orientation, and the idea that they did not have to leave their religion to appreciate or to be affiliated with Eastern thought. Shortly after the World Parliament, many Indian groups began to set up shop in America, including the Vedanta Society in 1894 and the Self-Realization Fellowship in the 1920s. But the doors to foreigners did not officially open until 1965, when L.B. Johnson rescinded the immigration laws set back in the early part of the 20th century. Since the United States immigration policy has dictated to a large measure the number of foreigners who may legally enter the country, it has in turn determined how various cultures will impact on the American melting pot. With the revocation of the immigration laws, immigrants began pouring in, bringing with them their religious and cultural ideas. Among the immigrants were several well-known Indian teachers, such as Yogi Bhajan and Swami Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada. During this time, Radhasoami-related groups also began to experience an exponential growth in their followings. That the immigration laws were dramatically changed in the mid-1960s to the advantage of incoming Indians has no doubt had tremendous effect on shaping Americans' views of things Indian. Today, naturally almost every major city in the United States boasts of one or more Indian restaurants, which was surely not the case 30 years ago. As we see, there are many worldly realities, like communication and politics, that spiritual movements must come to grips with if they are to expand. Keeping this important caveat in mind will allow us to ground the history of Radhasoami and other new religions like it in an empirical context, one which allows us to see how a spiritual message can intertwine, albeit distinctly, with a purely material medium. The first Radhasoami guru to visit the United States appears to be Shiv Bhat Lal, one of several successors to Rai Saligram of Pipalmandi, Agra. According to Dayal Yoga, in the year 1911 A.D., Data Dayal Shiv Bhat Lal went on a tour of Japan, America, and other foreign countries. There also he spread the gospel in search of God and discoursed on the physiology of the spirit. He did not rest. Coincidentally, it is also from Shiv Bhat Lal's lineage that the first bona fide American Radhasoami guru, Dr. Ishwar Sharma, emerged. Although Sharma was born in India, he lived in the United States for over a decade, working as a philosophy professor at several colleges and universities, and succeeded his guru, Kehr Singh, Shiv Bhat Lal's chief disciple and eventual successor, after he died in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the fall of 1981. Although much is known about Sharma's ministry, he's still living. There is very little information about Shiv Bhat Lal's visit to America and what impact, if any, it had on the spread of Radhasoami's teachings among Americans. Shortly after Shiv Bhat Lal's visit, Dr. Bhagat Singh Thin, an initiate of Sawan Singh of Radhasoami Satsang Beas, and an offshoot guru who did not acknowledge his Beas connection, permanently settled in America and preached a mixture of Sant Mat, Radhasoami, Sikh, and occult doctrines. He was modestly successful in his venture and gathered several hundred disciples. Bhagat Singh Thin also wrote a number of books with Radhasoami-related themes, including his most famous treatise, Radiant Road to Reality. Surprisingly, it would be another 35-plus years after Thin's initial visit when a Radhasoami-related guru visited America. In 1955, Kehr Singh, founder of Rouhani Satsang and longtime initiate of Sawan Singh of Radhasoami Satsang Beas, visited several cities in the United States during his first world tour. His visit, unlike his two predecessors, has been well documented and was very instrumental in spreading Shabd Yoga teachings throughout the country. It was also during this trip that Kehr Singh initiated Paul Twitchell in Washington, D.C. 10 years later, Twitchell formed his own group, Ekankar, which was primarily based upon the teachings of Kehr Singh and Radhasoami. Today, Ekankar is one of the most successful new religions in America, founded in the 1960s. The booklet, As They Saw the Master, Delhi, Rouhani Satsang, 1956, partially documents Kehr Singh's tour of the United States and elsewhere. It also provides several intimate portraits of Kehr Singh, written by new initiates. Though Kehr Singh did not attract large numbers to his lectures, in contradistinction with Vivekananda, for example, they were nevertheless well attended, and his tour was quite successful in establishing a permanent infrastructure and network of satsangi. Kehr Singh again visited America in 1963. This trip was even more successful than his first, with hundreds of people attending his lectures. George Arnsby Jones's book, The Harvest is Rich, The Mission of Kehr Singh, details much of Kehr Singh's tour. The book also graphically illuminates how the Indian guru spread his message. Concerning the Washington, D.C. leg of the trip, Jones writes, during a 27-day stay in Washington, Kehr Singh gave a total of 18 public talks. Some were given at private residences, others at the Friends Meeting House, the Sylvan Theater, the Theosophical Society, the Perpetual Building, the Washington Post Building, the House of Inspiration, Vienna, Virginia, the Wesley Theological Seminary, American University, Levering Hall, Johns Hopkins University, Brookmount Baptist Church, the Unitarian Church, and the YMCA. 8 further talks of a more informal nature were given at the residence of T.S. Khanna. A press conference held at the National Press Club was attended by representatives of 5 leading newspapers. While in Washington, Kehr Singh made 5 radio broadcasts, which included a recording made for the Voice of America in English and Hindi for the retransmission in India. He also gave a broadcast on the nationwide CBS network and gave complete coverage of his spiritual mission in the world. he made 2 appearances on television, and his message of love and hope reached an even wider audience. Before the master left Washington for Philadelphia, he was invited to the Capitol and introduced to a large number of senators and members of the House of Representatives. Senator Kennedy, in a long talk with Kehr Singh, welcomed the aims and the ideals of the World Fellowship of Religions. Almost a decade later, in 1972, Kehr Singh made his last trip to the United States. By this time, he was well known in spiritual circles, and many people, especially those in their late teens and early 20s, came out to see him. This trip, which at one stop saw nearly 1,000 people gather to hear Kehr Singh, is fully documented and photographed in the publication The Third World Tour of Kehr Singh. Tilton, Sant Bani Press, 1974. The first Radhasoami Satsang Beas guru to visit America was Kehr Singh in 1964. Kehr Singh's trip was even better received than Kehr Singh's, with the Beas guru attracting consistently larger numbers in his audience. This was primarily because Radhasoami Satsang Beas is well established in India and has roots in America since 1911. Unlike Kehr Singh's trip, though Kehr Singh's tour was not advertised, the Beas guru also did not publicly present his message the way that Kehr Singh had done in 1955 and 1963. Indeed, Kehr Singh's one and only impromptu television interview on May 28, 1964, with a news reporter in Minneapolis, Minnesota, caused a bit of a stir because it was so unusual. A verbatim transcript of the brief interview and a full account of Kehr Singh's travel to America are outlined in the book The Master Answers Audiences in America. Beas Radhasoami Satsang, 1966. Whereas Kehr Singh utilized the media, he was not averse to taking out newspaper and magazine advertisements. Kehr Singh, for the most part, resisted it. The reasons for this are complex and stem largely from an early Radhasoami history in Agra. Perhaps the chief reason is theological. There is a long-standing belief in Radhasoami that there are marked souls, and only those who are so marked will receive initiation from the guru. Thus, according to this argument, destiny, not advertising, leads souls to Radhasoami. But even in groups which do not allow any formal type of advertising, like Swami Bog and Agra, it is perfectly acceptable to publish books and circulars. Hence, it may not be advertising, as such, that is disdained. A book is in many ways a form of advertising, but rather certain kinds. And it is here where the differences between Kehr Singh and Kehr Singh can be illuminated. It is also here that we can begin to understand the various ways that Shabda Yoga doctrines have been transmitted. When a guru or a group is new and does not have an established following, it may be necessary to promote his or her or its teachings in ways that were previously thought to be too crass. However, when the guru or group does find a niche, he or she or it may then outgrow the former methods of proselytization and assume a more staid or dignified approach. Clearly, Kehr Singh and the Beas Satsang did not need to vigorously promote themselves. Kehr Singh's monthly satsangs at the Dera attracted tens of thousands of people, and sometimes the numbers reached well over 100,000. When he came to America for the first time, there were already several hundred initiates spread throughout the country. In contrast, Kehr Singh essentially started his ministry on his own, after he disputed the transference of his guru's mantle to Jagat Singh in 1948 at the Dera. Thus, when he came to America in 1955, he could not count upon Beas-affiliated satsangis to show up to his lectures. Even though T.S. Khanna, Kehr Singh's general representative who lived in Washington, D.C., tried steadfastly to sway initiates of Sawan Singh to Kirpal Singh. Only very small numbers of Bayah Satsangis switched over to Irani Satsang. Therefore, in several ways, Kirpal Singh was forging new territory when he came to America. For many Americans, he was their first introduction to Shabda Yoga teachings, and as such, carried all the pros and cons that an innovative and charismatic leader brings with him. Charan Singh made his second and last trip to the United States in 1970, 6 years after his first visit. Surprisingly, the crowds that attended his lectures this time increased almost tenfold. No doubt there are a number of reasons for this, but one factor that seems pivotal was the baby boom generation. Large numbers of disaffected youth attended Charan Singh's satsangs, just like they attended the talks of a host of other gurus, including the ever-popular Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Charan Singh himself was very aware of this, and commented that perhaps the youth were revolting against the hypocrisies of materialism and dogmatism. The largest crowd to see Charan Singh was in Pasadena, California, where over 1,500 people attended his talk. This was a remarkable number at the time, especially since there was no public advertising allowed. That California should be the place to draw the largest crowd is not surprising. Since the early part of the 20th century, California has been a sprouting ground for alternative lifestyles. Most Indian gurus have found their greatest success in California, including Paramahansa Yogananda of Self-Realization Fellowship, who permanently settled in Southern California and died at the Biltmore Hotel in 1952. Kirpal Singh's and Charan Singh's trips to America were clearly the most visible and successful of any Radhasoami-related guru up until the mid-1970s. Several other Radhasoami gurus visited America before this time as well. Outstanding among these was Fakir Chand, founder of Manatva Mandir in Hoshiarpur in Punjab. Fakir Chand made several visits to the United States, presenting informal talks, public lectures, and print radio interviews on both the East and West Coast. Interestingly, he was also the first Radhasoami guru to die on American soil. During his fifth trip to America, Fakir Chand stayed in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Although he planned to fly to Los Angeles, California, and present a series of talks sponsored and funded in part by John Roger Hinkins of MSIA, he suffered a cardiac arrest and died at the age of 95. His impact has been even greater after his death, primarily due to the efforts of his successor, Dr. I.C. Sharma, who has presented Fakir's teachings in a westernized fashion tailored for a Christian-educated audience. Following Kirpal Singh's death in 1974, there was a succession dispute, which led to a major schism in Ruhani Satsang. Eventually, several gurus emerged as claimants to Kirpal Singh's ministry. Three of the most popular of these successors was Darshan Singh, Kehr Singh, and Ajab Singh. All three gurus have made several trips to America and have been quite successful in garnering new initiates. After the death of Darshan Singh in 1989 and Charan Singh in 1990, their respective successors, Rajinder Singh and Gurinder Singh, some observers are calling it the Inder era, have traveled extensively. Rajinder Singh, the son of Darshan and grandson and initiate of Kirpal Singh, has lived in Chicago, Illinois for many years. Thus, he divides much of his time between the United States and his main Indian center of operations in Vijayanagar, Delhi. Rajinder Singh, who worked as an engineer for AT&T for many years, has expanded upon his father's ministry, doubling the number of initiates within just 6 years. Reportedly, he has close to 100,000 initiates. He has also presented the teachings of Sant Mat in a more westernized version, and has continued in the tradition of his predecessors by advertising his lectures and talks. Gurinder Singh, a nephew of Charan Singh, has already made 2 trips to the United States, first in 1991 and then in 1994. During his last trip, he stayed over for several days in Palm Springs in the middle of July and gave a series of very well-attended talks. Indeed, on one day, the reported attendance was approximately 4,000, by far the largest number ever to attend a satsang by a Radhasoami guru in America. Due to the increase of numbers, Radhasoami Satsang Beas has bought a large piece of property in North Carolina with intentions of building a center for Gurinder Singh's future visits. Unlike Rajinder Singh, who started conducting initiations just weeks after his father's death, Gurinder Singh waited nearly 2.5 years before he initiated anybody. However, even given his late start, he has already initiated over 100,000 people within less than 2 years, a number which is sure to grow into the millions, if his ministry is any way comparable to his predecessors. Gurinder Singh's uncle, Charan Singh, initiated over 1,250,000 followers, and perhaps more than all the other Radhasoami branches combined. Such large numbers in India strongly suggest that America is still in its infancy in terms of Radhasoami's potential for growth. Perhaps the most obscure visit of a Radhasoami guru to America, outside of Shiv Brat Lal's in 1911, was Kehr Singh's in the latter part of the 1980s, where he stayed for several weeks in Orange County. Kehr Singh, a successor to Sadhu Singh, represents one of the lesser-known Radhasoami groups in Firozpur. Although Kehr Singh speaks very little English, he has a substantial Indian following, numbering in the tens of thousands, and has several hundred devotees spread throughout North America. His visits are usually targeted to Indians living abroad, and thus do not receive the attention that other more popular gurus do. Kehr Singh's ministry demonstrates that there is not one audience in America, but rather numerable sub-communities. The future of Radhasoami, I suggest, lies in these micro-communities. To understand the popularity of Shabda Yoga-related movements in America, one must first come to grips with the demographics of these groups. Why? Because only when we understand the nuances of a certain community, we will begin to appreciate why one guru versus another has been successful. Perhaps Ching Hai, one-time initiate of Kehr Singh and founder of her own rapidly growing meditation movement, best illustrates this. Ching Hai has thousands of followers in the Asian community, many of whom cannot speak English and have never heard of the name Radhasoami. That Ching Hai is herself Vietnamese and is fluent in several languages indigenous to South Asia speaks volumes for her quick success in an area otherwise untapped by Indian Shabda Yoga masters. Given the proliferation of Radhasoami gurus in India and abroad, it is difficult to keep an accurate track on all the different lines of development. However, the following list provides some ideas of the more prominent contemporary Radhasoami gurus who have either lived in or visited the United States. Kehr Singh, Kirpal Light Mission. Ajaib Singh, Sant Bani. Rajinder Singh, Sawan Kirpal Mission. Gurinder Singh, Radhasoami Satsang Beas. Kehr Singh, Radhasoami Firozpur. Harbhajan Singh, Unity of Man. Dr. I.C. Sharma, Manatva Mandir. Although the preceding list is no way exhaustive, it does indicate the multiplicity of Radhasoami gurus and organizations. Moreover, this list does not include those gurus and groups which have genealogically dissociated themselves from Radhasoami, but which have nevertheless developed their own versions of Shabda Yoga for an American audience. American Initiates. When Indians began to migrate to Canada and the United States, they brought with them living testimonies to their respective religious faiths. One such Indian satsangi was pivotal in the development of Radhasoami in America. In a very revealing autobiographical article, Kehr Singh Sasmas, sometimes spelled Kehr Singh Sasmas, explains how and why he migrated from India to Canada and eventually to America. He also reveals how he came into contact with Dr. Brock, the first American initiate and representative of Sawan Singh. Writes Sasmas, "From adolescence, I had a strong interest in seeing foreign lands. In 1904, I took the opportunity to go to Hong Kong via Bengal, Assam, Malaysia, and Singapore. I stayed in the trading center of Hong Kong approximately 30 months. The master made my passage exceptionally easy. I went to Shanghai by boat, and then to Japan. From Yokohama, our boat crossed the Pacific in roughly 20 days, reaching Victoria in British Columbia, Canada. I found Vancouver to be a very beautiful city, with a fair Sikh population maintaining a large gurdwara. Entering the United States, I went to Bellingham, Washington, and from there to Everest, where I met the former governor, Mr. D.M. Clow. He was greatly impressed by the tenets of Radhasoami faith, but could not give up his dietary habits. In the beginning of 1908, I went to North Yakima and stayed for a couple of months. Close to my residence was the meeting hall of the local Socialist Party, which met every Sunday. I, too, was invited to attend a meeting and was questioned about Indian social conditions, as well as rites and rituals and different sects. At the meeting was Dr. H.M. Brock, who later became a satsangi. He asked many questions on Indian religions, and was very pleased, as was the audience, by the explanations. The next morning, Dr. Brock called and said that his wife was anxious to see me. He invited me to his office that afternoon. When I came, Miss Brock jumped up and we warmly shook hands. I told her of Radhasoami for the first time, and she had a quick grasp of the teachings. Soon we met regularly and discussed the greatness of a living master. When the both felt convinced of the teachings, they wrote Hazur for acceptance and initiation. Hazur was well pleased with their sincerity and sent them Radhasoami Mat Prakrash and discourses on Radhasoami faith, lovingly advising them to study the books carefully. After some time, Hazur, in his grace, authorized the initiation of Dr. and Mrs. Brock. They came to Portland for the occasion. Everything was conveyed to them exactly as directed by Hazur. The Brocks were a loving couple, and the first on whom Hazur showered his grace in America. What is perhaps most interesting from a historical perspective about Kehr Singh Sasmas's account is that it directly contradicts the recollection of official Bayos history. By Sasmas's own admission, he met Dr. Brock at a local Socialist Party meeting. The very next day, he met Mrs. Brock at the doctor's office. Brock was a dentist. However, compare the preceding narrative with the following official account given in Dawn of Light. One evening, while Kehr Singh was walking along a street in Port Angeles, Washington, he was approached by a couple, Dr. and Mrs. Brock. They had seen floating above his head a beautiful, radiant face with a white turban and a white beard. Unable to restrain themselves, they stopped Kehr Singh and asked him who this saintly-looking man was. Kehr Singh was puzzled at first, but thinking it must be the will of the master to reveal himself to this American couple, he said, "It is my master, Maharaj Sawan Singh Ji." Not satisfied with the brief reply, they were anxious to learn more about the extraordinary sight they had seen. In Kehr Singh Sasmas's own written account, he makes no mention whatsoever to the Brock's alleged vision of Sawan Singh floating above his head. Moreover, Sosmas clearly states that he met Dr. Brock at a socialist party first, and on the following day met with Mrs. Brock. Why the discrepancy? There may be several answers, but the most obvious one is simple confusion, because later on in Sosmas's account, he mentions meeting a Mr. C. Charles, who has an experience very similar to the one recounted in the official Bayos version. What has most likely occurred in the collective memory of certain Bayos Satsangis, and by extension the authorized history presented in several of their books, is that they have conflated the two stories, Dr. Brock's and Mr. C. Charles, into a single story. Keeping the Bayos version in mind, as it relates to Dr. Brock, analyze Sosmas's remembrance of Mr. C. Charles. Leaving the couple, the Brocks, in the hands of the master, I returned to Seattle, and from there went to Portland, Oregon. One day I took a boat to a small town nearby, the Dalles. The scenery was beautiful, the boat was crowded, and as people were finding seats, I was asked, "Where are you from?" "I am from India." "Do you have any knowledge of spirituality?" "I have a little, but I am not an adept nor a master." "You know, a spirit has just told me that I should address any question on spirituality to you. It is on such instructions that I have come to you." I asked the man to proceed. I asked his name. He was Mr. C. Charles, and was on a business trip. In the course of our discussion, he informed me that he saw an East Indian, tall and lean, with an angelic countenance, who appeared and disappeared 3 times as we talked. He felt that the man was my master, looking after me in an alien land. He wished that he could meet him. C. Charles' story is much like the Bayos story of the Brocks, that it is fairly obvious that the names have been crossed. This is significant, because the story of the Brocks, seeing the radiant form of Sawan Singh, has become part of Radhasoami lore. That the story is completely wrong, at least as it relates to the Brocks, seems not to have concerned Dr. K.S. Narang, the present head of the publications at Dura. It may be that the story has been told and retold so often that it would be difficult, if nay impossible, to extricate it from the popular imagination of thousands of satsangis. What this episode reveals at a deeper level, however, is the unreliability of history. It also reveals that hagiography may not be so much a conscious reworking of history, but rather a confused recollection of it. It is that very confusion which has led to the juxtaposition of Dr. and Mrs. Brock with Mr. C. Charles. Further, his narrative, Sosmas speaks about conducting initiations on behalf of Sawan Singh. This is a turning point in the history of Radhasoami in America, because it allows initiation to be done by proxy. Sosmas, under direct orders of Sawan Singh, conveyed the initiation instructions to C. Charles's entire family, as well as to the Brocks. Shortly thereafter, the Brocks were appointed to be Sawan Singh's first representatives. As the Dawn of Light points out, while in Canada and America, Kehr Singh also initiated a few other American seekers, as directed by the Great Master, Sawan Singh. A few years after their initiation, the Great Master appointed Dr. and Mrs. Brock to initiate accepted applicants, and thus they were the first American representatives of the Great Master. 20 years later, Dr. Julian P. Johnson was appointed to give instructions to persons who may find it more convenient to go to him. Johnson was living in California, a fertile state of spiritual seekers. Johnson's work as representative was short-lived because he departed to India on March 24, 1932, just 6 months after being appointed, and just over 1 year after receiving initiation himself. Julian Johnson, of course, became famous later on for writing the still popular text, The Path of the Masters, which comprehensively outlines the Radhasoami faith. Following in Johnson's footsteps, Harvey Myers, who was initiated by Dr. Brock on June 21, 1931, was appointed Sawan Singh's representative in March of 1933. Myers would serve in this capacity, witnessing the death of two gurus during his tenure, until his death in February of 1967, at which time Roland G. DeVries was appointed by then-present Master Charan Singh to serve as representative, a position which he still holds to this day, June 1995. After the death of Sawan Singh in April of 1948, his successor, Jagat Singh, appointed another representative to serve along with Myers in the United States. James Rapogel was asked to conduct initiations in the Midwest and East, while Myers retained the West Coast. After Jagat Singh's death in 1951, Charan Singh assumed the spiritual mastership at the Dera. It was during his reign that the Radhasoami membership saw exponential growth in the United States. Whereas there was only several hundred initiates total in America between both Sawan Singh and Jagat Singh under Charan Singh's stewardship, there were over 10,000, a remarkable increase by any standard, that eventually led Charan Singh to approve a formal organizational body in the United States to oversee administration of the numerous satsangis across the country. As Dawn of Light explains, legally, a non-profit California corporation, the RSSB, Radhasoami Society Beas, is governed by a board of trustees composed of the Master's representatives and 7 satsangis appointed by the Master for specific, stated terms. After Charan Singh's death, Gurinder Singh has firmed up the Radhasoami Beas organization worldwide. He has now centralized the appointment of satsang leaders. Gurinder personally approves each and every choice, and has increased the number of satsangis involved in various seva, free service, projects. Undoubtedly, this was necessary because of the increasing numbers and the inherent tendency for small cliques to form, which threatened the parent body. This first happened in Radhasoami's history right after Shiv Dayal Singh's death, which led to the formation of the Central Administrative Council. To avoid such disaffection and splintering in Radhasoami's satsang Beas, Gurinder Singh has tightened up the infrastructure underlying much of the day-to-day activities of the Radhasoami organization. This includes raising the age limit for seekers applying for initiation, 25 for males, revamping the printed initiation instructions, editing local newsletters, personally choosing satsang leaders, building new satsang centers, and traveling extensively each year to countries outside of India. The result is that Radhasoami Satsang Beas is the most organized, yet most popular Radhasoami group in history. The downside, of course, is that Beas lacks intimacy. This is a charge that has been leveled against it ever since Sawan Singh began attracting large numbers in the 1930s. Although Charan Singh and Gurinder Singh have valiantly tried to overcome the depersonalization that accompanies large group settings, both gurus, for instance, personally answer each and every letter they receive and hold open question and answer meetings several times a week. The fact remains that it is impossible for a guru to spend quality time with each disciple when he has over 1 million of them. Ironically, these large numbers have opened the door for other gurus, with smaller numbers to attract new seekers. Why? Because when confronted with the vastness of Beas and the limited time of Beas gurus, the would-be seeker may be inclined to seek elsewhere, especially if that seeker desires close personal attention. It can be argued that much of Kirpal Singh's success, for instance, stemmed at first in part from his accessibility. This was also true to some measure with each of his successors, Darshan Singh, Kakar Singh, and to a lesser degree, Ijab Singh. Whereas one would be hard-pressed to recount a story of Charan Singh consistently telephoning his disciples across America at all hours of the day. Darshan Singh was in the habit of having long telephone conversations with his devotees. Even personal meetings with Darshan Singh could last more than 5 hours. Thus, not all disciples, when they learned of Radhasoami, wanted to affiliate with Beas. Some consciously chose more obscure gurus with lesser followings. T.S. Khanna, for example, was initiated by Sawan Singh of Beas, but after his guru's death, he served as Kirpal Singh's first representative in the United States. Khanna has been highly influential in spreading the teachings of Kirpal Singh, and in turn Darshan Singh and Rajinder Singh. Other representatives of Kirpal Singh that played a part were Russell Perkins, who, along with Aaron Stevens, essentially legitimized Ijab Singh's role as Kirpal Singh's successor. This is intriguing, because it demonstrates how important satsangis outside of India have become. In former times, it was American satsangis who looked to their Indian counterparts for guidance. But in the case of Kirpal Singh's hotly disputed successions, which saw tremendous infighting over Darshan Singh's candidacy, Kirpal Singh Sangat did not expect their guru to appoint his son by will, the very antithesis, some believed, of Kirpal Singh's own controversial appointment. Certain American and Canadian satsangis played a key role in helping sway blocks of satsangis to certain succession camps. The following are 3 examples. Aaron Stevens, from Canada, strongly supported Ijab Singh, but later disavowed him as a fraud. In an important article published in Sat Sandesh, after meeting the guru at his desert retreat, a lead which Russell Perkins from New Hampshire carried through with by fully endorsing the Rajasthan guru as genuine. Reno Sarain, who was head of Hurani Satsang in America, disavowed all the claimed successors, though he temporarily supported Madam Hadevi's hand-picked appointee, Kehr Singh. Under Reno Sarain's direction, Ruhani Satsang separated itself from all the rival camps. Today it is a non-profit organization centered in Anaheim, California, which publishes and promotes the life and work of Kirpal Singh exclusively. And Judith Lamline, an initiate of Kirpal Singh's, declared her own candidacy, alleging to be carrying on her guru's ministry in Salt Lake City, Utah. Kirpal Singh's death led to the proliferation of a number of satsangs, which now have no connection whatsoever with the Ruhani Satsang or Sawan Kirpal mission. This, of course, is a natural evolution in Radhasoami history, since every succession dispute has been followed by more offshoots, which over time develop their own guru parampara lineage. However, what is rather new is its repeated occurrence in the United States. Below is just a partial listing of some gurus and groups which have splintered off from more mainstream Radhasoami centers and have established their own movements. Paul Twitchell, Ekankar; Judith Lamline, Satsang, Salt Lake; Dr. Bhagat Singh Thin, Sikh Study Groups; Walter Baptiste, Yoga Center; John Roger Hinkins, MSIA, otherwise known as Messiah; Jerry Mulvin, The Divine Science of Light and Sound; Shri Michael Turner, The Sonic Spectrum; Guru Maharaji, Divine Light Mission; Bruce Avenel, Elan Vital; Gary Olson, Master Path; and Darwin Gross, ATOM. The transmission of words. Although we know that Radhasoami Mat Prakrash by Rai Saligram, published in 1897-1898, was the first English book exclusively devoted to Radhasoami teachings, we are uncertain about what was the first Radhasoami publication to make its way to North America. There are, however, several candidates. Radhasoami Sect in India, a small pamphlet written by H.D. Griswold in 1908, and published in the journal The East and the West Discourses on Radhasoami Faith, written in 1907, but not completely finished due to the author's death, by Brahm Shankar Misra, the chief successor to Rai Saligram. Max Muller's brief account of Rai Saligram in the Life and Sayings of Ramakrishna, published in 1898. Phelps' Notes, written by an American attorney who talked extensively with Madhav Prasad Sinha, the eventual successor to Maheshwari Devi, and the last guru at Swami Bagh, Agra. J. N. Farquhar's often cited but historically misleading chapter on Radhasoami in his 1914 book, Modern Religious Movements in India. Each of these books, with greater or lesser detail, described Radhasoami teachings. Yet Saligram's Radhasoami Mat Pakrash, a small book, but quite concise in outlining the salient features of the Radhasoami faith, was perhaps the most widely read text. Julian P. Johnson, who wrote 4 influential books himself on Radhasoami in the 1930s, alleges that Radhasoami Mat Pakrash was instrumental in developing his interest in the spiritual path. That the book was authored by a guru from a lineage long since divorced from Beas seems not to have been a great concern back in the 1910s, 1920s, and 1930s. Why? The answer is almost too obvious to warrant discussion. There were no other books available in English which talked about the teachings in such an inviting and precise manner. Eventually, however, with the influx of Beas-sponsored publications, Radhasoami Mat Pakrash was taken off the list of recommended readings. Today, most Beas satsangis have never even heard of the book, much less read it, even though it was one of the cardinal texts that early American satsangis used in their spiritual readings. In the 1930s, a number of new Radhasoami books were published, most of which were in English, making Radhasoami much more accessible to a non-Indian market, as noted in the Radhasoami tradition. Not until the 1930s, though, did information on the Radhaswamis become extensively available. In this 10-year span alone, 1930 through 1940, more material was produced than in all the previous decades combined. With this rapid increase came the works of Nichols McNichol, The Living Religions of the Indian People, 1934. H. D. Griswold's Insights into Modern Hinduism, 1934. Paul Brunton, A Search in Secret India, 1934. And L. S. S. O'Malley's Popular Hinduism, The Religion of the Masses, 1935. All of which, with the exception of McNichol's, contained lengthy sections on the Radhasoami faith. Coupled with the scholarly infusion were several books published by satsangs themselves. Maharishi Shiv Brat Lal's Light Anand Yog, 1933. Several books by Dr. Julian P. Johnson, with a great master in India, Call of the East, The Unquenchable Flame, The Path of the Masters, and an unpublished manuscript, More Light on the Path of the Masters, and a large volume, later divided into 2, by Lek Raj Puri, Mysticism, The Spiritual Path, 1933. Since the 1930s, there has been a steady increase of books on Radhasoami. Today, there are well over 200 titles in English, with most books being published by the Beas Satsang, Swami Bagh, and the Kehr Singh related groups. Ironically, however, the most popular of all the Radhasoami books in America remains Julian P. Johnson's The Path of the Masters, which was written in 1939. Johnson's book has been instrumental in leading people to Radhasoami. It has also the infamous distinction of being the most appropriated of any Shabda Yoga text. This has been Radhasoami Comes to America, Memories of Kehr Singh, edited by Andrea Deem Lane and David Christopher Lane. Read for you by Doug Haynie.